Hi, thanks for joining. My name is Dave Cabellis. I'm a product manager in the WebLogic Server group. Today I'm going to talk to you about some multi-tenancy features in WebLogic Server 12.2.1. Some pretty exciting stuff. Do you want to start with the standard safe harbor statement? Almost everything I'm going to talk about today is about product that has been released. They may allude to or talk about some future plans, so keep the safe harbor statement in mind. I thought I'd start with some of the drivers behind the investment that we made in WebLogic 12.2.1. First is, we're seeing a big adoption of cloud, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, platform as a service. Lots of different definitions there, and as part of that too is we're seeing adoption of different types of applications or different ways of packaging up applications. So we're seeing really a conversion of these big monolithic applications into smaller pieces that can be managed independently, scaled independently. We're seeing a push towards that. We're also seeing this, moving of workloads to and from different environments, private cloud, public cloud. Of course, it varies from organization to organization, but frequently it's, I want to develop on my desktop machine, then I want to move my application to QA, which is running in the cloud, and then I want to move the application back to my on-premises data center where we're going to run in production. So there are lots of different scenarios that look similar to that. So we're investing, making sure that we're providing the right level of support for those types of tasks. Consolidation is a big thing here too. So when we talk about platform as a service, it's, why do I want to do that? Well, I want to do that really because I want I want some agility around, really say a DevOps scenario, but I also want to be able to get better utilization of my underlying infrastructure. So that's, consolidation is all about density. Let's reduce cost here. And so while I do that, right, while I put things together into a shared environment, I need to make sure that my applications have the isolation that they need. I can't be putting things together and having one application really hosing another one, right? So we want to be careful there, and so we've actually built features to make all this stuff work. So let me tell you a bit about what we built. So first is this notion of a pluggable partition, or you can think of it in terms of a microcontainer. Right? So within a WebLogic server domain, you've got this encapsulation of an application and the system resources that application needs. From there, you can actually unplug this and plug it into a different environment. So you can move from environment to environment within your data center. You can move from, an on-premises data center, on-premises cloud to public cloud, back and forth. It's really easy. The idea here is it's a very small container. So you could think container-like capabilities in that it's an encapsulation, but it doesn't have the full stack that some other containers might have. So there's no piece of the operating system. There's no JVM here. There's no there's no app server that has to start on top of the JVM. It's just the application and the system resources that it needs. So it's much smaller piece here. So combining these smaller pieces gives us this notion of consolidation, right? So I'm going to share my platform. I'm going to run a shared set of WebLogic server instances, and on that shared set, I'm going to host many microcontainers. And what we're seeing is we're really seeing a 3x consolidation ratio at the hardware level. So if I was able to run 10 applications on a given server, now I can run 30 applications on that same piece of hardware. So, and lastly is the isolation aspect. So for each of these microcontainers, you can have a different security configuration. You can have a different set of users, different set of administrators, and then there's other levels of isolation too that I'll get into, including runtime, data isolation. So good stuff there. This is a summary of the value of what we built. So let me peel the onion back a little bit. Let's talk about some of the technical aspects here. So the gray block on the screen here is meant to represent a single JVM running WebLogic server. And in this JVM, I've got two of these pluggable partitions running, two microcontainers. In each of these, I've got an application. There may be multiple application modules. That application needs things like a JMS server, JMS module, maybe multiple JMS modules, multiple destinations, etc. Also has a data source here. Could be multiple data sources. In general, this is what your application needs, from the server side. So each of these pluggable partitions um, really is isolated from there. So my application, when it goes to look for the resources it needs, it only sees the resources that are within the same pluggable partition. Everything else is really opaque to it. So each of these has its own namespace. You could think of it that way. If we start to think about the broader picture here, so if I'm going to be adding and moving things around, that means I'm going to need to be able to do something at the web tier. So we've built an integration with Oracle Traffic Director so that when you add a partition to WebLogic Server, we automatically update the configuration in Traffic Director so that it knows how to route traffic to this partition. So this means as I unplug and plug in somewhere else, Traffic Director automatically knows that as well. So you can think of Traffic Director as a gateway for my microcontainers. Virtual Target is a nice little new block here that I added. Virtual Target does two things. It gives you a way to define the address for how do I get to this thing? How do I get to my applications running in this partition? Things like host names, URI prefixes, network channels. You can also do some configurations like port numbers, IOP configuration, T3 configuration. So all this is available in the virtual target. The other thing virtual target does is it gives you a way to say on which hosts will this run. So it kind of gives us two sides of the coin for addressing. How do I get to it and where does it live? And then my partition configuration just points to a virtual target. So, and it follows the virtual target wherever the virtual target lives. So, you can start to see here there's a nice pattern happening, right? It's, we're not just looking at WebLogic Server, we're extending the model. So of course, there's a natural affinity with pluggable database. Each of these partitions would naturally want to point to a different set of data. It doesn't have to, but you would think that's pretty natural. And then because pluggable databases in database 12c make it easy to encapsulate and get better utilization of your database infrastructure, it just seems to fit very well. There's also movement to the cloud becomes very similar, right? So with a pluggable database, you can unplug your database from on-premises and then plug it back into Data Cloud Service on Oracle Cloud. You can do the same with WebLogic Server pluggable partition. So it's a very common model to move things around. And then of course coherence is part of this mix. So just like with the other pieces here, we're sharing the same infrastructure, and then we're dedicating individual pieces to these partitions. So as we roll out or deploy an application that needs a coherence cache, we actually spin up a cache service within that shared coherence cluster. So for each of these partitions, they would get their own dedicated cache service, which means separate data. You can actually share a cache. That's sort of a lesser used use case, or that would apply to fewer use cases, but it's possible, right? So you can get even more density if you need to. So you can think things like a lookup list that wouldn't change and wouldn't be different per application. If you look at the whole picture here now, from front to back, this is it's fully integrated and really efficient. So that's the technical aspects. I want to get back to there's three pillars, right? So the portability, the density consolidation, and then the isolation. So portability, to drill down on that a little bit deeper, we're seeing requirements for maximum portability between environments. So think 12-factor applications. What are they looking for? Looking for parity between dev and production. So think about solving it worked here and now it doesn't work elsewhere, or it worked for me, it won't work for you. So we're solving that issue here too, right? So I encapsulate the application and the stuff it needs, and I move it from environment to environment, so that the encapsulation gives it what it needs, so you can really rely on it. Fast startup and shutdown. So sometimes people think of this as disposability. I need something instantly, and that's we're only starting the piece that we need here. We're not starting a VM, we're not starting a JVM, we're not starting the app server. We are starting the app, and we're just starting the resources that the app needs, but we're not starting the rest of that stack. So it's really fast. For scale up, we leverage the WebLogic Server infrastructure for that, the clustering infrastructure specifically. And that clustering infrastructure now has automated elasticity for dynamic clusters. So that's a new 12.2.1 feature. So, we can automatically scale up based on traffic or what have you. And then I've already mentioned this a couple of times, migration to the cloud. So you can unplug these microcontainers and move them as needed. One other aspect of portability that I wanted to bring up was live migration. So there's the plug aspect, like I can unplug and plug in elsewhere, and then there's the I want to move it from one cluster to another scenario. So in this case, we provide this today. There's an API that says migrate. You just say where you want to migrate to, and then when we do that, we actually call into Traffic Director to say, okay, we're moving this partition now. So all new traffic should go to the new hosts. Old traffic with sticky sessions, we're going to stay on the old hosts. We call graceful shutdown on the old host, and then eventually, when all the work is completed, that it started there, then that partition is shut down on the old host, and then it ends up living only on the new host. And of course, Traffic Director knows how to deal with that. So this is targeted mostly at web apps. If you're using things like RMI to get to a different application. This really isn't the right scenario for that yet. That's on our roadmap. So next release, we're planning to support all application types, and eventually we'll be able to migrate across domains. So right now this is within a single domain from cluster to cluster. We'd eventually want to be able to move from domain to domain, site to site. So good stuff around portability. Lots of flexibility. So the density factor I did talk about too. So in our internal benchmarks, what we're seeing is you can put a lot of applications together, far more than 3, right? So we're testing far more than putting 3 times the number of applications into a single domain. But when you look down, right, when you look at the operating system level, we're seeing that we can get a 3x consolidation benefit. So that means what I was running on one piece of hardware before, I can run 3 times that. So if I was running 10 applications on a single server, isolated by VMs, now I can run 30, right? I can still run VMs. I would just run fewer of them, but I can get much better density there. So that means savings 2/3, right? My costs go down to 1/3 of what it was in the past. And then by running a common platform, running fewer instances of WebLogic Server, running fewer domains, we're expecting to see about a 25% operational benefit there as well. So you're still running the same number of applications. It's the infrastructure that you're spending less on to manage. And of course, this is the stuff you're talking about WebLogic Server. So you'll still be able to use WLST. We now have we have even better REST management APIs. So there's lots of all of this infrastructure is available, and it's the same infrastructure that you would see in Java Cloud Server. So really easy to adopt. That's what it comes down to. So high density on a with a product you're very familiar with. And isolation. So this is the last pillar. So 4 flavors of isolation. So there's runtime isolation, and this is where we partnered with the JVM team, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail on that. But the idea here is we need to make sure that we provide isolation between applications running in the same JVM. So besides the runtime isolation, there's security isolation. So each of these partitions can have its own security configuration, its own security realm. That means its own security authentication providers, its own security authorization providers, its own set of users. With users goes administrators, right? So that kind of nice segue to the administrative isolation here. So you can have dedicated administrators and deployers and monitors for your microcontainers. So each of these microcontainers can be autonomous, right? With including their own set of administrators, people who can manage this thing. And then the microcontainer itself has its own life cycle, has its own troubleshooting. You can change configuration independently from all other partitions running in the same environment, start them, stop them, turn on debug flags independently, look at logs independently. Like all of this is administratively isolated so that these things can be managed on their own. And then I've talked about the traffic and data isolation already. So within the partition, there's dedicated JNDI. It's a namespace there. And then you can think about, we're going to point to separate data on the data tier, and we're also going to provide a separate cache service within coherence caches. So traffic and data is isolated. So let me dig into the runtime isolation a bit. So first, we have partition work managers, which is fully at the WebLogic tier. This is not a part of our partnership with the JVM tier, but it's I think it's relevant. It's part of the pieces that you can use to set up a priority for different partitions in a shared JVM. You can do things here like you can set up a fair share where all your partitions have the same request fair share ratio. So in this case, maybe it would be 25, or you might have 50 and then 15, 15, 15, or 40, 20, 20, 20, knowing that one of your partitions is really a higher priority than the others. So there's just some options there, and then you can manage threads here too. So similar to regular work managers, partition work managers are an extension of work managers, but there's some different things you can set. So instead of setting a minimum threads constraint, you set a cap on your minimum threads so that you don't so you don't hog. You prevent one partition from hogging all of the threads. You can also set a maximum thread constraint to say, like, don't let this partition take more than X at any given time. So good stuff there. What's really interesting is this resource consumption manager. So it's modeled after the work managers in that you set policies and fair share ratios, but it's based on information that the JVM now keeps track of for us. So after rolling out some of our plans to customers, what we heard was we must provide significant isolation within the JVM. So we work with the JVM team to say how can we manage this. So the JVM now keeps track of some specific resources, right? It's retained heap, CPU time, and open file descriptors, and they keep track of those per partition. So at any given moment we know what each of these partitions are using, and then at the WebLogic tier, we can set up policies that say, let's take specific actions when the use of these resources goes above a certain level. So the actions we can take are notify, which means I'll write to the server log, and then that can kick off a whole lot of automation based on WebLogic Diagnostics framework. We've got a slow option here, or a slow action. So if a partition starts to hog a resource, we can hit the brakes pretty hard. Like this is not just a little bit of slowdown. It's really, let me prevent this from hogging the resources that it seems to be hogging. And then so the way we do that is we actually call into the work manager infrastructure the request queue, and we deprioritize all requests for the offending partition, right? We deprioritize by 90%. So the idea there is let's slow down this partition so it doesn't continue to add more of the pain it's inflicting on the rest of the partitions. I'll talk about stop next. So again, if we cross a boundary and we really need to stop this partition, then we can do that. There is the fail action that really only applies to open file descriptors. It's a much simpler resource if you think about it, right? It's an application says open file, open file, open file, and we know we can stop that. We can stop that call with a simple exception, right? And then once the partition falls below its limit again, then it can start opening files again. So that's the simplest one of the bunch. So let me show you an example of what a configuration might look like. So in this case, I've got a single JVM. I've got 4 microcontainers running within this JVM. I've got a series of triggers set up. This is a single policy. It's a retained heap policy, and there are 3 triggers within this. So the first one is to notify, and I have that set up at 1.25 gigabytes roughly, and then at roughly 1.5 gigabytes is when we kick in the slow motion, and that's where we really try to slow down this partition. And then at 2 gigabytes, I have a stop trigger set up, right? So if any one of these partitions hits that 2, we'll actually stop the partition within this JVM. So if it's a cluster, we're only stopping it in a single JVM. So each of these are evaluated only on that level. And then an administrator can come in and take a look at the logs and restart the partition within the JVM. So again, this is a safety net. So that's the summary, right? So that's what we built. We start with this notion of microcontainer or pluggable partitions. You can take your applications and package them into this ultralight container and move from environment to environment. Doesn't even have to be applications that we're running only on WebLogic server. You could take applications that we're running on other application servers, and then you take them and run them on this common infrastructure, right? On this platform as a service. And when you do that, you get high density, right? So you get 3x consolidation ratios by putting things together here. And then, when you put them together, we know that you need isolation. So we provide quite a bit of isolation here: runtime isolation, administrative isolation, security isolation, and data isolation. So I do want to show you this. So I'm going to demo some of this really quickly. So this on the right side here, you see I've got a domain. I'm actually going to start with 2 partitions in that domain. We're going to dive in. We'll take a look at the administrative isolation. We'll take a look at the resource management. We'll take a look at some of the monitoring. And then I'm going to show you movement of a partition. I'm going to unplug from one domain. I'm going to plug it into my production domain. This sort of mimics a development scenario. Single partition in my dev environment, and then I just need to move it. Simple, one click to export, one click to import. I did want to point out, so when you're playing with these new capabilities, to use Fusion Middleware Control, you need to actually start with this domain template, the one that's highlighted in yellow here. The other templates will be automatically selected based on dependencies in the tool, but this will give you use of Enterprise Manager Fusion Middleware Control, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but it doesn't require some of the other things that ADF and JRF require. So it's a simple setup. That's what the restricted is all about. So let's take a quick look here. So I'll show you on my remote server. I've got a few things running. So I have an admin server running. This is for my base domain. This is the domain that has multiple pluggable partitions running. I've got Node Manager running for my cluster, so I can start new servers if I want to. I have my dev domain up and running. So this is just an extra tab. We don't need to go to that one right now. So let's kick over to Fusion Middleware Control. I'm going to log in. This is a really nice UI. It's really snappy. It's centered on monitoring and control. It does enable you to do configuration, but it's really gives you a nice view right to start with. If you haven't played with Fusion Middleware Control, it's definitely a nice thing. If you're kind of looking for that old homepage from the WebLogic admin console, you can go to this sitemap, which will get you really that same list. But let's go back here, and I did want to say too that this menu is meant to mimic the navigation tree in the admin console. So it's got a lot of the same entries here, and then of course some new ones because we've added some features. So let's start with, I talked about virtual targets as the way to route traffic to partitions. So let's take a quick look there. So you can see I've actually got 3 virtual targets set up, one for cargo, one for day trader, and then one for that other partition I'm going to move in here later. But it's really simple, right? So each of these I'm using a URI prefix. They've got a target, and you can see they're being used by particular partitions. So this is the way we route traffic. So let me take a look here. We can drill in, and this is simple, right? URI prefix. I could do other things here. I could add host names. I'm not doing that. I'm just using what's available on the server itself, and then I could set up channels. I could set up ports. I'm not doing any of that. And then of course here's the targeting. All right, so I'm targeting this to my application cluster, and that's this is a very simple scenario. And then let's look at these pluggable partitions, these domain partitions. So I've got 2 of these up and running. One of them is running an app called Cargo Tracker. It's an internal example app. And then I'm also running Day Trader, which is from a competitor app server. The idea here is, there's no special programming to run in one of these pluggable partitions. It's Java EE. So it's easy to take other applications and run them in this environment. So let's drill into Cargo Tracker a little bit here. So this is the domain partition. You can see it actually has its own life cycle, startup and shutdown. It's giving us some nice monitoring right from the home page. If we look here, you can see there's lots of stuff going on for this partition, right? Lots of things I can do. If we go to administration, I'm going to go to resource groups. So within each partition, there's at least one resource group, and that resource group is just simply a way to group, applications and resources and then target them together. So we'll drill into this, and if you look here, we'll see there are services, right? System resources that are available, within this partition. So I've got a single data source I'm using in JMS. I've got a JMS server set up. Typically there would be JMS modules as well, and this particular application creates its own destinations on the fly as it needs them. So then if we look at deployments too, you'll see that this, within this partition, we've got a single application deployed. And this is really up and running. And my server is running at port 7101, Cargo Tracker, there it is. So it's up and running. Let's actually, if we go back here, we take a look. Talk about it, administration here. So if we look at resource sharing, this is going to give us the partition work manager and the resource consumption manager configuration. So in this case, I've got a fair share value set up. These are the defaults for everything else. And then for resource consumption manager, I got a single policy set up. It's a retained heap policy. I've got notify at 300 megabytes. I've got slow at gigabyte, and then I've got shutdown at 2 gigabytes. So this basically means I expect traffic to be under 300 megabytes. I expect my retained heap to be under 300 megabytes. Beyond that, I want to let somebody know, and then I really want to start slowing things down at 1. At 2, I think I'm going to be hurting the other partition running in this environment. If we go to, there's a nice performance summary here that will show us too that as we hit this application, we'll see a little more traffic happen. But so it keeps track of CPU usage. This is showing allocated memory, not retained memory, and then open file descriptors. So you can monitor each of these pluggable partitions, on their own as well, plus the start and shut down and so forth. So that's what's running in this domain. Let's go take a look at my other domain. So this is my dev domain that I have up and running. In my dev domain, I have a single pluggable partition running, and this is medrec dev. So in here I've got, we can see deployments here as well. I've got these 3 apps deployed. My service is similar, right? I've got a data source here. JMS, I've got a module and a JMS server. So these are all running within the partition. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to unplug, or I'm going to export this partition. So I see this, and I say export, and then it asks me a couple of questions, right? So do I want to include the application bits? Yes, I do. I want to include all the archives there that I'm running as part of this pluggable partition. I'm going to just use the default for the key file. I'm going to put this into a folder where I put my exports in general. So I say OK, and this will just create. It actually creates 2 files for us. So I'll go and take a look at those. So I go to my last tab here. So it creates 2 files for me. It creates a zip file, which is the configuration and the applications, all zipped up, easy to move around. And then it's got this JSON file that exposes all of the different configuration attributes for the partition and for the resources running in the partition. So the idea is that you can pick these up and move them as is, and that's the immutable aspect. if you need flexibility, you need to be able to change some things, you can modify this JSON file to change the configuration. And then when you do your import, those changes will take place. So let's go back to Fusion Middleware Control with my main domain here. We could call it my production domain. Let's go to my list of domain partitions here. Now, if you remember, I already have a virtual target set up for this, so I'm ready to go with this. So now I say import, and I know this is that browse, right? And so here's my zip file. That's the one I want to pick. It has a reference to the attributes file, so that it'll automatically get picked up there. We say OK. I'm not going to do any other changes here. I'm just going to say OK. And this brings in this partition. So we'll give it a second. It's setting up all the infrastructure it needs to set up. There it is. So when you create a partition, whether it's through import or any means, we always create it in the shutdown mode, so that way you can finish configuring it before you start hosting traffic for it or hosting requests. So we say, okay, now we can start this. Okay, it's up and running. So now actually we'll hit that application too. And it uses that imported URI prefix, and there it is. So it's up and running. So pretty easy, right? One click to export, one click to import, maybe 2 clicks to import, but it's ready to rock and roll. So I hope you'll actually kick this around. I think it's exciting stuff. I think there's a lot of possibilities around the portability factor, great density. The isolation, I think, is the key to acceptance here. So take a look. Definitely interested to hear what you have to say about it. You can reach out to us in lots of different ways here through Twitter and Facebook, on LinkedIn, all of this. And then there's lots of other material up here on YouTube as well. So thanks again.